I'm going to talk as little as possible because I want to learn too, because I love their stories. But I was doing a story, a series about Davis Avenue in Mobile, and knew very little about it. So I took Eric's tour, his historic tour, and everybody should go do that. But I remember we had not even pulled away from the curb in front of the Mobile History Museum, and he started telling me about Mont Louis and the history of the Creoles, and it blew me away. And like, if we had never pulled away from there, it would have been worth it. Just because there's so much history that I didn't grow up here, but a lot of us don't know. And like, once you hear the stories, it makes you appreciate the place so much more. So we're gonna, Eric, I'm gonna start with you, and we're just gonna kind of go down and asking questions. But I want you to kind of set the stage for the Creole history in Mobile, how that came to be, who Creoles are, and then Mon Louis kind of give us the history background.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thanks to the Estuary Group for all of the work that you're doing. Believe me, it is much appreciated and valued. Most of us realize that Mobile was founded in 1702. It was King Louis XIV that wanted access to the Mississippi River. And he contracted with two explorers, the Lemoyne brothers out of Quebec, Canada. They ended up in Pensacola. Pensacola was occupied by the Spanish, and they had weapons. They flipped that boat around, headed back to the Gulf, headed west, and took a little too sharp of a turn, and ended up in Mobile Bay, actually 27 miles north of Mobile, in a place called Chestang, but ultimately back to Mobile. And when we look at Mount Louis Island, it was actually occupied by the Mobilian Indians, and that's where we got our name from, Mobile. They didn't actually stay there, but they passed through a lot, okay? And during this time, Mobile didn't have many rules and regulations, and the king sent a second ship, which were females from France, and they were actually orphans from the Roman Catholic Church, and their chaperones were nuns, and he sent them here to marry the soldiers so that they could grow the community. And they did, and ultimately there were ladies that came from the Dominican Republic, and these ladies were associated with the soldiers in different ways. And some of them had children, and those children were called Creoles. As you all know, Louisiana is known for a lot of Creoles, but Mobile has a significant population as well. And of course, Fort Conde, what we have there today is a replica that was done in 1976 for the bicentennial celebration of the United States. But the original fort was probably about where the Bankhead Tunnel is. But what's interesting is that down Royal Street, that was all property owned by Creoles that lived in that area because being close to the fort. But ultimately, they ended up on Mount Louis Island, and Lynne and I had a discussion earlier about
You
the
say it.
pronunciation.
What's the right pronunciation? And I still think I got it wrong.
And you know, it's like Roberta's from Massachusetts, right? So up there she would say, the calf went down the path to take a bath. And we would say the calf went down the path to take a bath. So if you're going to Dauphin Island and there's a sign that says Mont Louis, it's Louis, but most people will say Mont, M-O-N-T, or M-O-N, Louis, or Louis, so it's okay, whatever, however you want to pronounce it.
Right.
But the name actually derived from one of the early descendants. His name was Nicholas. And he had a son, and they were descendants of Maximilian. And the word is that he took both of those names and put them together, and the island was called Mount Louis, which is on the eastern side of, the western side of Mobile Bay, and the south side of Fowl River, and I guess to be the west east side of Heron Bay. So it's that area. Most people, when they're traveling to Dauphin Island, they don't realize when they go over that bridge, right to the left, that's the area that's Mount Louis Island. So.
Wow. So, and then for how many generations? Because it was kind of isolated, right? It was an isolated area that was several families. It was the Collins and some other families. Did y'all all have families there, or what was the connection?
Well, the Utopia Club is a civic social organization
Right.
that started in 1936. And actually, we all know Gary Cooper.
Yeah.
It was his aunt who was the owner of Christian Benevolent Funeral Home. She owned that property.
Oh wow.
And she sold it to the Utopia Club, and then they purchased property on the Eastern Shore in a very secluded, nice area as soon as you go around the curve. But that became the clubhouse because I don't know if we couldn't go to Dolphin Island during that time or we just didn't want to.
It
One
wasn't
or the other,
advisable, no.
okay?
It was the last one.
Yeah, but it was an area where we could go during the summer and have fun. And there were other social clubs, the Postman group, they had a clubhouse. And then there was Faustina's Beach, Chestang Beach, where the churches would come. And it was just a really nice area that you could come during the summer and have fun all day long.
Primus Representative Jones, did y'all have memories going there during the summers, or what were growing up there?
Well, yeah, basically, again, from a growing up perspective, I don't have the deep history of these guys. As you can see, they were here when they dug the hole. But 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 as far as growing up is concerned, yeah, I do remember it. It was kind of a fantasy type situation. My father, we drive down. We had as I recall, it was a 1956 Buick. Which means that me as a little kid, we're sitting there in the back seat. The only thing we could see is the back of the sofa. You guys remember how those cars were back then. And I'd get put in the car and ride along for about an hour or so, and then all of a sudden the door would open. I'd be in a new world. Now, how I got there and all that good stuff, because you couldn't see out of the window. But yes, but Eric is exactly right. Going to Montlewis Island, that was the beach at that time, and it extended a lot further out than it does now because of the beach erosion. That's why the work that you guys are doing is so important. I don't have the advantage of these guys here. Once I graduated college and left, and I went to Auburn too, but that's exactly right. I'm another Auburn grad. But and I've been gone for over 30 years. So I got to see Mobile in snapshots when you'd come back from the holidays and, oh, that's new. Oh, that wasn't here. Gee, that's nice. What happened to the beach? So again, we get to, I get to see from that perspective. And that's why, again, those types of things were so very important. But going there for picnics, for churches, for Faustina and Chastain Beach, and from time to time going to the Utopia Club, they were all right there next to each other together. And again, as far as our community was concerned, that was the place to be. And those types of things really added to the youth growing up and the youth appreciating that next generation and the next generation and the next generation going forward. So it was absolutely a great thing. And again, I'll say it again, that's why this work on the estuary to try to save and preserve what we have and what we had is so important. Sam?
I think one of the interesting things about Montlewis Island is that during that period, it was the only recreational water access that the black community had. Chastain and Faustina beaches were the places they went. The other interesting thing is that at that time, those citizens really couldn't go to the Utopia Club because they weren't members. So it wasn't just an open situation. The Utopia Club was a club of members, about 30 members, who actually built the building now, maintained the grounds, They actually did it with dues and assessments from the 30 members. The 30 members were basically doctors, lawyers, postmen, people who had status in the community. So they were quite influential. And Chestang and Faustina, all of the church picnics would go there.
All right, tell me about a church picnic there. What was the food
Well-
like? Who was there? What
Well,
was...
first, when you got to the Fowl River Bridge, you had to get off the bus.
So you took
Because
the
the
bus
bridge
out
was so
there.
shabby, they were afraid that the bus would fall through the bridge. So the bus would precede us across, and then we walk across and get back on the bus to go down to the beach. So that was for a number of years until they built the new bridge.
So you would take the bus from Mobile out to Bon Louis.
Actually, they were like school buses.
Okay.
Or charter buses.
Okay.
And a lot of churches, I mean, just
Okay.
about all the churches in the black community, that was the place you went after Vacation Bible School. You went to the picnic. The uniqueness of it was that when you got in the water there, you could walk a long distance before the water even got chest high. So it was very popular with young kids, with elderly people. They would actually walk out in the water. The interesting thing that I often say to people is that the strange thing was whenever we came over for the church picnic and got in the water, the people who lived there got out. So they get out of the water and let us. They had a big dance hall and all those things on the beach.
Really?
But Utopia Club was a club where, at that time, anyone could be a member.
Right.
It wasn't just open membership.
Right.
They had a set of bylaws that limited the number of members in the club. The problem with that is that we had 3 occasions where the bulkhead blew out. So those 30 people had to get together and personally finance the bulkhead.
Yeah.
And it was very, very expensive. Every time there was a big storm, you had to be taxed for a bulkhead. I remember at one time, every member had to pay $1,000 by a certain date to fix the bulkhead.
That's some big money right there.
Well, we lost about 30 members. but it really was very important to keep it open because after Faustina and after Chestang, then the only access you had was getting invited to the Utopia Club's annual picnic. And I mean, that was a very sought after invitation.
Did people dress up for that? What was...
No. The picnic there were several functions that were sponsored by the Utopia Club.
Uh-huh.
The picnic was one of the most popular. Each member could invite maybe 6 people. And so you'd have maybe 120 people on the ground for that picnic. The reason it was so popular is not just because it was the Utopia Club, but the Utopia Club was a picnic where you didn't have to bring anything. They supplied all the food, all the refreshments, everything you needed was supplied by that particular member that invited you.
Yeah.
And so that was very popular. The Utopia Ball was actually the Mardi Gras Ball. And I think I should add here that the Mardi Gras Association was started in the Utopia Clubhouse.
Wow.
The same people who headed the Mardi Gras Association were members of the Utopia Club. So when you went to a Mardi Gras ball with Utopia, it was the ball to go to. I mean, it was a huge ball. It was very restrictive in terms of what you wore, how you handle yourself, the character of who was invited.
What was the dress code? What did you have to wear?
Costume de rigueur, always. Always, costume de rigueur. And you know, some people would show up at the door and say, well, you know, I couldn't find one of those tuxedos. And they would say, well, you can come next year. That's really how strict it was
Right.
in the ball.
Right.
But it became a very popular place because then the Utopia started allowing people to come down to get access to the water. And after the bulkheads blew out, which is a real problem for us because we lost almost 40% of the property
Wow.
to the water. And that still continues today. Well, since I've been there, we've done 2 bulkheads. and they've been blown out every time a storm comes. And then our neighbors built bulkheads that were out farther than the ones we built. So actually, all the water now comes to the Utopia Club. And we continue to lose property. It is a very historic site. And where it sits, it, at one time, is one of the largest piece of properties down there. Now, it's about half that. So it's been around a long time. It's served the community well, and most people who know about it know that it's a historic site.
So what is it like having that space where there's so many areas that you couldn't go, but to have this that was your own, and this culture, and there were no limitations? I mean, what did that mean, having that?
It was, really, for people in those communities, it was the only recreational access they had to the water. There was no access. In fact, today in Mobile, aside from the convention center, most of the other property on the waterfront is owned by the state
Right.
or someone else. So you don't have access downtown to the water. So you had to go to some other area to get access, and that was the access that everyone went to at that time. And that's why it was so important to the community.
Right. So how has it changed over the years? How has it grown? I mean, everything has developed. How has it changed? And
So, if I could add to some of the things that Representative Jones said. As a kid, as he was saying, we would have to go a half a mile out to swim because the tide would be out. But we had a pier and a jetty, and all the kids had a crab basket, and we would put a chicken back in it, and we would be out for at least 6-7 hours until the tide started coming in, because you had to swim and hurry back because it would raise up. And when we got back, we would have these gigantic blue crabs in the basket. We don't see those anymore, okay? I mean, beautiful crabs that we could take up and ball and
what'd you
eat
make
right
of it?
then.
Oh, so y'all just ate them straight up right there?
Right there.
Okay.
And then as the sun would set, we would have a broomstick with a nail in it, and flounders would be close to the shore, and you could just go along and gag flounders. Wow. And so it was always a treat to have that experience. You just look forward to that as a kid because it was fun. And
And you do it with all your cousins and your friends and.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it would be members of the organization.
Yeah.
Mobile is very aristocratic. If his dad, mom had a kid, my dad and mom had to have a kid. So there were a lot of us around the same age during that time. And the parents had their social events going on, and the kids. I just don't ever remember anybody drowning in anything. I think we all knew how to swim. It's amazing that I think about that now. We all knew how to swim, and we would be out. Nobody was monitoring us. We would just had the whole bay to ourselves.
And the water was clear, right? I've interviewed people talking about the water was so much clearer. Was it clear?
I don't remember that part of
I
it.
don't remember being too cool.
Oh,
It was at one time.
okay.
At one time, near the shore.
Yeah.
The water was clear.
Yeah.
But our original bulkhead, I don't know about meters, but it's about 25 yards from where it is today. So you really have to love Mother Nature, okay? We can still see the foundation of the original bulkhead.
Yeah, still.
And some of the older descendants, they tell me that there was a street out in the bay, and the church was out there. That is not the original location of St. Rosalima. So over the decades, we've lost a lot. And it's amazing. You can be sitting on the banks and see where those ocean liners come by, and about 5-10 minutes later,
Really?
the waves are coming in. And of course, when they come in, they pull the sand out. But what was amazing during Katrina, we had about 15 feet of pure white sand from Foul River all the way to Dauphin Island. And then, of course, the next year it disappeared because of the fluctuation erosion that takes place.
I think another thing, Eric mentioned that there were other people who owned property next to Utopia. There were about 20 families that really bought property all down Monroe. Some of them still have it. Some of the families are older families of Mobile, and they've divested themselves of the property. But there were a number of people who were right next to each other, all the way from Utopia. They had the Postman's, the Comrade Clubs, various families of people, individuals who owned that property at one time. And I think probably about 6 of them still do.
And to add to that, you know, Mobile was capital of the Louisiana Territory at one time, and then there was the Onus-Adams Treaty, and that treaty provided some extra privileges for Creoles because a lot of the children were Creoles. And when those individuals would pass, they would say, look, I'm leaving my property, my assets, and my cash. So a lot of those families inherited hundreds of acres in that area. And they're still third generation families, the Treniers, the Collins, the Chestangs, the Durettes, that have property that's still in the family on both sides of Dauphin Island Parkway, because it goes all the way over to Hudson Bay, and on that side of the river, you're looking at Bellingraph Gardens across the water. So it's just a really beautiful area that's quiet. There's still a lot of people that don't know about it. And
it needs to stay that way.
yeah, I have friends in Atlanta, and when they come to Mobile and we take them to the island, they're just mesmerized. Because, see, they have everything else in Atlanta. They just don't have water.
Yeah.
You know, and when they get down here and they're just like, oh, this is unbelievable.
I know that someone probably has the question, well, how many Creoles are in the Utopia? None.
I suppose that. Yeah, Eric does bring up a interesting point. Like I said, I was away from home for over 30 plus years, but Eric lived in 5 different states. Kind of experienced most of the different cultures that the United States of America has to offer, including 10 years in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is a panel discussion by itself. But it was interesting because even them, when you bring them down, because they hear us talk about the island, they hear us talk about our Mardi Gras celebration. I mean, they think you talk to some of those people, especially ones in around Chicago and the Ohio area, you know, they think that Mobile is like in the heat of the night or something. But I said, no. I said, no, it's not like that anymore. Come down and see. And when they do, they're always amazed. And we always say they're always amazed at the water. They're always amazed at the Mardi Gras celebration. Then they get all excited about Mardi Gras. Oh, I'm coming, I'm moving. I'm saying, you can move down to Mobile. We'd be glad to have you. But you need to understand something. Every day is not Mardi Gras before you get down here.
I
But,
mentioned,
yeah,
I mentioned that there are no Creoles members of the Utopia today, but we host the Creole reunion
yeah, that's right.
at our facility. I think about 3 years ago, we hosted people from all over the United States, and some who lived in foreign countries really came to the reunion. It was really just a lot of people showed up for that reunion.
Exactly. Like I said, we said that to say all of this. You guys are exactly right. What we have here is really unique. It is really special. Anytime people who haven't been exposed to the southern waterway, the Gulf of Mexico, especially the ones that live on the coast, the Pacific Ocean is freezing even in the summertime, and the Atlantic is, you know, kind of depends. But the Gulf of Mexico in this area is really something special. And it's really something that people from other areas appreciate when they get here, which is one of the reasons that's driving our population growth. But as far as and the Utopia Island and what it was, like Sam and Eric said, was something that was critically important to the growth and, frankly, stabilization of the African American community. Because again, as things evolved and got better and bigger here in Mobile, Alabama, that provided a good balance, whereby the African American community, the black community at the time, you know, got a chance to experience the good things about Mobile and good things about the South.
Right.
Like I said, everybody knows the other stuff, but there's good things too.
Lynn, sometimes I just say that it's a scaled down Martha's Vineyard. Really scaled down. Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
So if there's one thing that we could change or sprinkle pixie dust or do to help protect it, preserve it, what would that be?
Give all these people a hand, tell them to keep doing what they're doing. That's what we gotta have.
That's exactly right.
Trust me, I've seen data, they can tell you the velocity of a wave in 1952 on March the 2nd at 3 p.m.
Wow.
They've got that
Wow.
kind of data.
Wow.
It's amazing. In several of the meetings that I've been to, the amount of information that they have about that bay is very impressive, very impressive.
Wow, good.
So we, again, appreciate and value what you're doing. And if we're not on top of this, DIP will be water on both sides. Okay.
You mentioned
Yeah.
that. That's where it's going.
Yeah.
Dolphin Island Parkway, for those that are not from Mobile.
Yeah. I would think from answer to your question, the important thing, and again, what Eric said is data and information. People need to know and understand what's going on with the program. Everybody hears the word beach erosion. We usually see stuff on the 6 o'clock news or something, and they're thinking that it's something that's happening other places. They don't know the level of risk that our way of life and our waterways are at too. Just as general knowledge in the community. People know of you and what you're doing, and yeah, they're pretty well great. Somebody's working on it. But again, they don't know how critically important that it is. So communication, more communication, better communication, and make sure that every single person that owns a piece of property along your targeted areas know when your meetings are, have access and information as far as to the data that you have, and understand how they can help and be a part of what it takes to preserve it. So if we can get those three things from the standpoint of what could we do better, that would be my recommendation.
The communication was very important to us when this organization approached us to talk to us about the shoreline as it relates to Utopia and where we are with that. There was some work done in the past, I think, by the Corps of Engineers, and we thought that work was going to help us. It actually directed more water to us. What was done on the point out there directed more water to us, but we didn't know actually what they were doing. We saw the work going on. We had no idea what effect it would have on Utopia until it actually happened.
Yeah. Okay.
On a positive note, my daughter was in Houston this weekend, and she sent me a picture. She's in a seafood restaurant, and there was this identification, and it said Mount Louis Island oysters. Do y'all know where you buy them from around here? I have not seen them. But yeah, she said, this is amazing. And they were big oysters, $1.50 a piece. But I'm going to have to go down to the bayou, see if I can't find some of those oysters. That was just this weekend.
Well, I saw you admiring the oysters in the video, yeah.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
stuff with that. Henry, how are we doing on time? Yeah, we good? Okay, start wrapping up. All right, if anybody has like one really great question to ask them, anybody have like a question or anything? Oh, that's okay. Okay. Where's the Utopia Club?
12185 Gregory Road. Actually, if you, as soon as you cross the bridge, there's the church, and that's direct, and it dead ends at Gregory Road, and we're in the second half of Gregory Road, right on the bay, about 200 feet worth of beachfront.
I think you might want to mention that Utopia has been there so long that at one time there was a road that came off the main highway that said Utopia Road, goes right in the gate of the Utopia. That road was, because of disrepair, and it's not a road that the county takes care of. So it's we don't use it anymore. It's not closed. We don't use it anymore. But it's very easy to find. Once you see the church, you turn left at the church, and the road will follow you all the way around, and you see Utopia on your left when you get to the end of the road.
It's right there.
All right, I want to thank all our panel for y'all. I mean, there's so much to learn, like stories and like understanding where we live. And I'm going to put another plug in for Eric and this Dora Finley. What's the full name?
Dora Franklin Finley African American Heritage Trail.
That was it. I knew
We
there
do
were
tours.
Yes. It will change how you, I mean, Eric's the greatest storyteller, and it will change how you see all of Mobile and what you learn about it. And again, like the more stories we know, the more we understand and the more we're connected. So, but thank you all for the work you're doing. And thanks, Henry.